Hello, listeners of the future. Hello, rollers. Welcome back to another episode of Classin' Up the Joint. This is the part of the show where we ask really interesting people really inane questions. I speak English well. I don't have a degree in it. I can't make that claim. My name is Colin. I use he and they pronouns. I am the GM and creative director of the Roll Report, and I am joined, as always, by another incredible, fantastic guest who I will let introduce themselves. Please.
Hello. I am Rachel. I use any and all pronouns, and I am excited to be here.
Yeah, we are so excited to have you. Thank you for joining us, Rachel. Do you want to give like the very brief bio of who you are and what you do? Because I can do that. I can practice my own elevator pitches about other people. But if you want to, I want to let you do that.
Sure, I'm happy to. In very succinct, although I'm never succinct, terminology, I am a voice actor. I am a live streamer, content creator, and very recently have jumped into the TTRPG space as a GM and actual play performer.
All super fun things. Very, very exciting. Yeah, I feel like I want to just dive right into all the things. But the first question that I've been asking everyone and that I'm curious about, what if I'm gonna interpret that like acting and that part of your life came first and the RPGs came later. And I'm curious, what about that grabbed you? And if it was D&D specifically or some other game that you were playing, but like what sunk its hooks in?
That is a great question. So yeah, acting and stuff 1,000,000% came first. I have been kind of, I was gonna say on a stage, but like if you could count the YMCA as a stage.
Oh yeah, totally.
Since I was like 4, maybe 5. I've been doing like theater and plays and stuff, whether it's after school, whether it's community theater, children's theater, whatever it is. So acting definitely came first, and I've been doing that all of my life. And then when it came to going to college, I started going for something else, realized very quickly that was not going to work. And so I went to college for a bachelor's degree in acting. And it focused mostly on like stage theater acting kind of energy, but also just kind of the roots and the foundations of traditional acting. So I did that and I loved it, but very quickly in that process came to the realization that most categories or genres of the acting industry are, if not stereotypical, very hard to change. And so if you're not the exact person, whether it's the appearance, whether it's the voice, whether it's the attitude that they're looking for, you're never getting hired. So that came across really quickly, and and
that's a whole other like several hours of chat about like entrenched industry and performer bias within many aspects of performing. But that's a different podcast. Well, I'll make that one in a year or two.
Yeah. We'll do that conversation in like the after show or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically find that out towards the end of the college bachelor's in acting, all that jazz. The college that I went to, and a lot of ones that do acting and performance degrees, you have to have a credit in something, even if it's from the school, before you're allowed to graduate. So I found it in sort of the conversation that we're not having. I kept not getting cast in things.
Sure.
Whether it was from the school or other things, I kept not getting cast. And I was like, well, I kind of need the credit to graduate. So in the building I was at, they had a sound booth because they also had an animation department. And there was the animation seniors have to do a thesis film. So there was a casting call for a voice because they needed someone who was a student who was going to work for free. And I was like, I need the credit. And from there on out, I made lifelong friends. It was my first delve into voice acting, which another long story, but my first time stepping into a booth, I also broke my finger and went to the ER, which is crazy.
Wow.
Long
Hell of a
story
first
short on
day in the booth.
literally, I can't believe I didn't drop it right then and there. But long story short, if y'all ever get to go into a booth, please keep your hands away from the doors. All right, they're heavy. They will break you.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But that's how I fell into voice acting. I loved it ever since. I've been a huge character person. I love doing horror work. That's kind of my specialty. And I've been diving face first in that. And then because I graduated during pandemic. So as pandemic continued and then ended, voice acting was great, but as things started like opening up and things, I was like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I want to do more like acting where it
Yeah.
involves like your whole being and your face and your body and things like that. And voice acting does, but it's a little bit of a different
It's
mindset.
it's a very different scale, and what people see of it,
Yes,
unless they're watching a recording of you in a booth, is a very different experience. Yeah.
exactly. And I started traveling with my voice acting workshops and through conventions and the way so many people fall into it, Critical Role.
Mm-hmm.
I realized that D&D and TTRPGs are like a thing beyond just sitting around a table with your friends. Like there are performance aspects to it.
Sure.
Um, and so they released Candela Obscura, which is the game that I play that I know, and that got me into TTRPGs. And that was my loophole into I auditioned for Queer RPG because I was like, well, let me do one and see if I can treat it like an
Yeah.
actor and not just like a home game. And I could, and so then I started making my own, and here we are.
Amazing. Um, wow, and so many follow-ups. I feel like starting with what is it about Candela Obscura specifically that was so compelling for you?
That's a great question. So Candela Obscura, what it was is it was a little bit of right place, right time.
Mm-hmm.
Because I I'd never watched Dimension 20 or Critical Role or any of the big name players, right, in D&D. I'd never watched any of it. And then I saw, I think it was like a TikTok or something,
Mm-hmm.
of like a trailer for a what I thought was an improv series that is like dark and spooky and like now other words I could relate it to are eldritch horror, but at the time I
Sure.
didn't really know that. And I was like, ooh, that's my energy because I really love horror. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't usually like, D&D and that kind of stuff. So maybe if I watch this horror show, it was 3 episodes, right? It wasn't a long campaign. So
Yeah.
I was like, it's short. I'm gonna watch it. Maybe if I watch it and I really like it, then I can get into everything else. So that's why it was Candela. Because it was brand new.
Yeah.
And even though there are other horror systems, it was new. So it was circulating and horror. And I was like, let me do this. And that's what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Well, and it I think in the perfect storm of things, like it happened to be out in a way that great actors who are also names in the community
Yes.
are playing it versus
Yes.
I mean, just off the top of my head, like I don't remember if I've seen that level of recognizable people, casts from Critical Role or Dimension
Yeah.
20 playing Call of Cthulhu or Mork Borg.
Yeah.
I say that, and
Exactly.
now as soon as I've said it, Crit Role might have done a Call of Cthulhu short series,
Mm.
but like those kind of being the two other like big
Right.
horror ones that I know of, like they're just not,
Right.
there's not as many opportunities to see them and go, oh yes, mine.
Yes.
Yeah. And so you then have taken that and been running your own Candela Obscura game for, I want to say, a while, but I don't know specifics.
It's weird to say a while because technically yes, but in the grand scheme of me getting into TTRPGs, I have not even been in the scene longer than a year. So in the time
Way to
frame that I've
dive
been in
in
this,
feet first.
yeah, in the time frame that I've been in the scene, it's been a while, but
Sure.
the entire scene itself has been less than a year. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Hello, rollers. Welcome to your mid-roll. It is I, your host, Colin, here with a couple small announcements and thank yous. Announcement. You may have already heard this if you listened to the show last week, but we're changing some of the things with Classin' Up the Joint. You, our listeners, will be able to hear the entire interview every time we have someone new on the show, which will continue. And what we're going to do now is, if you support us on Patreon, you will be able to submit questions directly for our interviewees that come from you and not from my brain. If you support us for as little as $1 a month, you can submit questions and only you will get the answers. Only our Patreon followers will have access to the recordings of these Q&A and be able to submit questions that you would like to know the answers to. You can find us at patreon.com/therollreport to join our supportive crew and submit questions starting right now. And starting with one of our upcoming incredible guests, I am so excited to sit down with Sebastian Yue. Sebastian, among other things, is an RPG designer, writer, and editor, a full-time employee community manager at Hitpoint Press, lead editor on the upcoming Cosmere RPG based on the novels of Brandon Sanderson, the designer and writer of the Field Guide to Floral Dragons, and that is just a tiny, tiny sampling of all the incredible work that Sebastian has already done and that they have coming up in the future, which I'm gonna say, they are working on an expanded Tangled Blessings by Cassie Mothwin, which is one of my favorite discoveries of the last year, and Subclasses Revivified, bringing you all of the subclasses left behind by the 2024 rules update. And speaking of that, some extra special upcoming guests are returning. We are so excited. We're going to have the Slovenly Trolls back on. We're hoping to have Patrick Perini and Emily Graymore of Unbalanced Encounters, hopefully Kitty Stryker, maybe more, and we are going to do some deep dives into the 2024 rules update. We're going to get extremely opinionated, and it's going to be a good time. So stay tuned for all those coming up later this year. I know the rules have been out for a minute, but don't you want to hear us have opinions? Lastly, thank you all so much for supporting the show so far. Again, if you are our supporters on Patreon, go back to the website, submit a question for Sebastian, and you and only you will hear Sebastian's answers to all of your exciting questions. Find us at patreon.com/therollreport to submit your questions right now. And don't forget, follow us on social medias at The Roll Report Cast on Instagram, TikTok, and who knows, maybe you'll find us other places. Back to the show. How have you been finding? I guess like it is a large lift to go from like, oh, I like this game, I think I'm gonna play, I can treat as an actor. Oh, I'm gonna run my own streamed or recorded games. That's like a very fast progression to go through.
Yes.
The large question is like, how has that been for you? But like, you know, the specifics in there, like I'm really curious how that process has gone and what you've found as you go from 0 to 60 very, very quickly.
Yes. It was interesting because so I got the rule book off of just Crit Roll show. Not intending to run games and genuinely not intending to play in games. It was just, I like this show, I'm gonna get the book, I want the lore. And then when I read it and I had the first audition and got in with Queer RPG for theirs, and I played it as a player and as an actor, the system is very, from what I'm told, one of the most like rules light systems in the space. There's very, very little that you necessarily have to know mechanic wise. And so that personally felt like the jump from player to running it was a lot easier for me.
You don't need to learn a whole rule book and or have it at your fingertips in case someone's trying to pull a fast one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was probably the biggest thing. And then also I'm a control freak, so I love being a player, but there's a piece of me that like is like, I want the plot and I want to know everything that's gonna happen and I want to like do all these little things and have my fingers in every pie. So I have I don't want to say I like GMing more, but maybe a little bit.
Wow. I mean, so many people would love to hear you say that because we frequently have the curses of the forever GM who only wants to
True.
play but just agreed the once. And all the players were like, where the hell can I find a good GM? Yeah.
True, true,
I
true.
mean, and that makes a lot of sense. I guess and I want to ask the control of the story you're telling versus guide just in I guess in
Yes.
terms of it, like the semantics of it to me kind of imply um I notice in myself a bit of fight back against my GM
Mm.
controlling versus leading that story and I don't know that I even have a question as much as like how does that resonate with you and in your games both streamed or not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's something that I am discovering as we go because before I jumped into GMing and currently now, because again, I am new to this community, but they've all
Yeah,
been so lovely, the people in it. Um,
people are incredible. It's really
they're
nice.
so nice. Oh my gosh. What I have learned and what I was learning before I started doing the GMing was very much that aspect that you're talking about like it's
Hmm.
not trying to, it's improv. It is not supposed to be like, here's my plan, do my plan when you're the
Hmm.
GM. And so I knew that going in, and I do think that is the case, and that is the best way to be a GM is like to work with your players.
Yeah.
When I say control and like having a bit more of that of the story, it's because I specifically for my streamed series,
Yeah.
um, I do have a plan. They
Hmm.
are more like a show than they
Right.
are necessarily like an improv game.
Right.
And a little bit of that lends to the fact that most Candela series are like three series in quotes, right? You can play the game as long as you want.
Sure.
But they're like 3 or 4 episodes, and that's it.
Hmm.
And you move on to a new circle, you move on to new characters. Um, and so with season 1 that finished and season 2 that we're making, um, I definitely have more uh planned
Right.
aspects than a normal GM does. However, it is never like I don't sit down and go, okay, players, here's the exact story, and here's what you're gonna
Sure.
do, and you can improv dialogue, but that's it. It is more I will sit down and I will say, hey, there's a mystery here, and you have a set amount of episodes. I'm letting you know that by the time we get to the last episode, I'm going to end the story we're at. So if something hasn't
Mm.
resolved and you want it resolved, you need to do it before
Hmm.
this last session because I will do it for you.
Right.
So and that's
Well,
very, very
that's
different from normal
yeah.
GMing.
But I think that's fair, and I think it speaks a lot to the difference between presenting these games to an
Yes.
audience
Yeah.
and what you can do in your home games. And and then there's the further distinction of like people that record their home games and it turns
Yeah.
you look at the first season of Critical Role and that's their
Yeah.
home game. They just happen to be
Absolutely.
very good actors. Or yeah, what happens in my home games is utterly unhinged and absurd. I'm like, well,
Yes.
like if I was going to record this, I'd really need to give you a little bit of guideline about where I'm trying to go with the
Hmm.
story, so you can choose how you get
Yes.
there.
Yes.
But yeah, um, yeah. Are what is what has been one of the most, I don't know, I want to say like exciting and fun things about this? Because I'm going to ask you about the hard stuff too, but like start with the
Yes.
good. What's been really fun? What have you
Oh
discovered or
my
learned
God.
or just amazing experiences? And yeah, I in either in your own game or in the games that you've played for others.
Absolutely. I think some of the exciting fun stuff that I did not expect to be there, which I think is
Mm,
is the coolest things that you find. Um,
mm-hmm.
there are a lot more spaces and people that are willing to take you as you are without asking questions and without being
Mm-hmm.
like, could you do this or could you do that or could you mold to that? There's like the amount of groups where I have like talked to and the players are like, we don't care. Like, we don't look you up. We don't try to find things. You sounded nice when you filled out our
Yeah.
form. So we
Yeah.
want to see how you play with us. And I think that welcoming attitude is one of the nicest things I've experienced, especially coming from like the acting side, because you don't necessarily get that over there. It was really nice to have people who not just will do that, but then they also like help you. Like I went to play,
Hmm.
I did a D&D one shot and I don't know a lot about D&D. Um and I literally was like, "Hey, just tell me, please, if I'm supposed to roll something or do something, I'm looking at the wrong numbers." And the amount of people who were like, "Yeah, we'll tell you, like, here's this and that and this and that, and we'll tell
Hmm.
you everything." And it wasn't like go memorize the book. Was really
No.
cool. Yeah, I just think the energy and the attitude of the
Yeah.
community has been
Yeah.
amazing. And that's probably the best part, genuinely.
I mean I agree. I think there's some amount of self-selection that I've noticed. There is, because I believe there is still, the internet tells me this is true, right? There are definitely still old white dudes who've been playing
Right.
D&D since the 70s and demand that it
Right.
be full of like racist, sexist bullshit and
Yes.
like all the horrible, like,
Yeah.
if you are a female character, your strength can only go
Mhm.
to this high, all that garbage.
Yep. Yep.
But so much more of the community, and so much more like the visible and most vocal elements of the community, are extremely open and welcoming,
Yes.
and trying to create games and tell stories that feature all the diversity we can find, both in
Yes.
its casting and the actual content of the story. Um, yeah, I'm so happy that has been your experience and not like a bunch of gatekeeping fucking
No.
assholes. Yeah.
Oh God, that would have sucked.
I mean, it's, it's enough to turn people off for sure. And
It
it's,
is.
I think it's like giving someone Pathfinder or like D&D
Right.
3.5, like one of the really math heavy, super crunchy things. And you're like, slam this giant rule book in front of
Right.
them. Welcome to the fucking game. Like,
Right. Right.
Jesus, tone it
Well,
down. We're
right.
all
I
here to
mean,
have fun.
it's also interesting because it speaking to that aspect, it's not just really encouraging, really exciting, really welcoming people. It's also people who, like, if you don't know the space, or you're you don't have necessarily a lot of experiments what experience
Bit of both.
with me, yeah, a little bit of both, with maybe whether it's game mechanics, whether it's right, like if you're from the era that didn't do consent checklists, whether that's a new thing to you, whether different people use different like X cards and things. I've
Hmm.
found that as somebody who didn't know what safety tools were, because wasn't in this space, it's not just people who are encouraging and like, we're here to help you. It's also like, if you am I allowed to swear? I should ask that ahead of
Yeah,
time.
absolutely.
Okay.
I already did. Far too
the-
late for
it,
that.
okay. It's people who are like, if you fuck up, we don't just like cut all communication, block you, tell everybody to avoid you. It's, hey, you're not supposed to do that, or you're not supposed to
Yeah.
say that, and here's why that isn't something that is cool anymore, or you didn't know that wasn't okay, right? So
Yeah.
it's interesting to have a space where it's not just like the extreme of one side, both the idea of, we encourage all people and it's okay if you fuck up, we're still here
Yeah.
to work with you.
Yeah.
That's been a lovely experience.
I attribute it a little bit to how I think playing RPGs forces you to develop communication skill
True.
in some ways. If you're, I don't even, I think I'm going to say, if you're playing the quote unquote right way, I think it has to teach
Yeah.
some of that. And so I think it lends to the community being more willing to offer feedback if someone fucks up in a certain way. And if
Yeah.
that person does not double down and insist,
Right.
then we're like, it's okay, it's fine. We
Yeah.
still like you. Just times have changed since the last time you could use that phrase or say
Exactly.
things like X.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I'm so happy that was your experience. What has been some of the challenges? And in this, I'm curious specifically about GMing actual play and how your Candela Obscura game has gone, but
Yeah.
also if there have been like some wider challenges that you have found.
Yeah, so I think it's I challenge is interesting. So I'm gonna say it's a challenge. I don't think it's a negative or a positive. I just think it's a
Sure.
challenge. Specifically, and this ties a little bit into my experience jumping into the scene, but also that you're interested in the experience with GMing and running an actual play series. Um, I personally, and part of the reason why I started with Candela and sort of joined this thing, I really like dark horror, scary, like dramatic things.
Mm-hmm.
And as an actor, I like both GMing that because you're still performing, at
Yeah.
least for an actual play you are, and I
Yeah.
like performing in that space. Um, and I think one of the big challenges, at least on me, which thankfully is theoretically not as big of a challenge for other people, is that is not necessarily an atmosphere that a
Mm-hmm.
lot of groups want. Um,
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
that's totally, yeah, it's totally fine, right? Like, play the game you want to play, even in something
Yeah.
like Candela or Cthulhu or Vampire the Masquerade, right? It's okay if you don't want to play even a horror game as a horror game. You do not have to. But coming from an actor's space,
Mm-hmm.
those moments, that drama, that anger, like crying, getting emotional, being scared, all of that is something that I not only want to experience when I perform, but I also want to have my players experience
Mm-hmm.
as a
Yeah.
GM. And it's definitely tricky to find that in the actual play space
Sure.
as a performer. That's the hardest space that I've been trying to find. And it's partially why I've been continuing and pursuing doing my own series of it.
Yeah.
Because uh I only cast either actors who have no idea what the game is or maybe know little bits and pieces, or I very specifically cast people who are like recommendations from my
Mm-hmm.
previous actors.
Sure.
Um because I'm not necessarily in the actual play that we create, I'm not necessarily looking to create like a oh, silly little spider crawls on the wall. Like I'm looking for that spider to come down and bite your head off, and there's gore and I want you to,
Sure.
like your loved ones might die. There's a lot of emotional space that I
Yeah.
want to play in that for someone who, and you don't have to be an actor, but for a lot of people, that isn't necessarily an emotional touchstone that they want to go to, which is totally fine.
Sure.
But it's definitely been the
Yeah.
challenge for me and part of why I run my own series.
I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense because uh, I think about RPGs and sometimes as it's a form of escapism. It is
Yes.
we're all going to use our collective
Hmm.
imagination and we are going to forget the post-capitalist hellscape that we are currently in
Yes.
favor of the
Yep.
quite often feudalist, mildly horrible,
Yep.
fantastical, imaginative space we play in. Um, and I guess I'm just going to say that my suspicion is that the percentage of people that view eldritch horror as escapism is somewhat smaller. Although
Yes.
in this moment, I also understand the appeal. I'm like, oh my god, the crushing metaphysical horrible
Right.
burdens of like climate change and capitalism and everything else versus oh look, there's just a thing with too many tentacles, knuckles, eyeballs, and
Hmm.
teeth right there. Then like that's the
Exactly.
problem, you know.
Exactly.
um yeah. um, are there other people? I guess are there other people that you have recognized doing similar work in this space that you're like, yes, that is something that I love that I'm interested in, either as a one off or like consistently.
Yeah. So I think it varies.
Mm,
It what I'll say is if I had seen a group doing it consistently,
mm-hmm.
I would not run my own. Because I
Sure.
do kind of run with the idea that I don't necessarily, I would be running games, but I wouldn't be putting them on as a show.
Sure.
So I wouldn't say that I have one that I'm necessarily, at least that I have found, that is
Yeah.
necessarily at the type of consistent, dramatic
Mm-hmm.
performance that I run in my games. However, there are definitely series that have really
Right.
strong dramatic emotional performances within their shows.
Yeah.
Um, the I'm trying to think. Oh, I don't remember their name, but I get fed so many on TikTok where they're clips because it knows what I want, the algorithm.
It's
And
really
I'll
good
get
at that.
clips. It's really good at that.
It's creepy.
I'll get beautiful like moments of, like, and I'm sure someone will know it if I say it. Like cleric loses paladin because two players are playing as like a couple, right? And one of the characters
Mm.
dies, and there's this beautiful
Mm-hmm.
moment. So I've seen those TikToks. I recently finished a Candela Obscura season with Twisted Fates, and there was some beautiful emotional role play in that. And a lot of people who tend to do more of the horror-ish games have more serious moments.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I I wouldn't say, I mean, it's weird. It's a hard thing to explain because for for a lot of people, they might be able to name one off the top of their head where they're like, "What are you talking
Sure.
about? That's like super dramatic and emotional and powerful, and that one's really good." Um, and that's probably true. Maybe there's just something that I have yet to be able to grasp the words to explain
Yeah.
that I am trying to convey that I don't see as the main material of another
Mm-hmm.
show, is what I would say.
Well, and I would put the question like how much exploring of what else is out there are you doing? And I say this not
Exactly.
in a judgmental way at all. Like
No,
I have worked for a
absolutely.
choreographer who is like, when I am making a piece, I will not go see anyone else's work because it will
Right.
affect my own.
Yep.
And so I would definitely I understand that approach as well. But
Absolutely.
just curious how much other
Yeah.
is there other shows you are following? I'm going to catch up with them every week versus I'm going to try to like go out and like listen to something new all the time and see if anyone else is doing what I'm interested in.
So that is my biggest detriment. And I'm fully
Mm,
like, I am one of those people, like the choreographer you mentioned, where I'm like, when I hone into something, I stick there.
yeah.
And it's really important. And one of the things that I'm trying to push myself to do more of is find more media and more
Hmm.
people that are doing things, whether they're similar or not, in the
Sure.
space that I'm in, because even if it tells you something you don't want to do, it's told you something. And so,
Yeah.
like, that's really important. And so, eh, there are
I.
people that I've listened to,
Hmm.
or people that I have like watched, but not in full capacity of seasons. And I need to do more
Sure.
of that. But I also have a little bit of that, if that neurodivergency thing where when someone recommends you to go watch the thing, you're like, well, now I can't watch it because you told me
Yeah.
to watch it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm trying to like get more into there without too many suggestions.
Yeah. Well, and the like focusing on your own craft is super legit. Like we always say art imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. All art
Yes.
is theft. Like, you know,
Yeah.
and to really try to silo yourself away from people that are doing a similar thing so
Yes.
your own creative juices are not fed very explicitly by that. Um, yeah. Uh there I had half of another thought and then I just like I totally lost it. I don't
That's
know.
okay.
Yeah. Um I guess there was I was at half a point about like a longer arcing series.
Mm,
To pick our giant step siblings in the room, like Critical
yes.
Role I think does
Yeah,
achieve many of these moments, but
they
they're
do.
stretched out over 4 to 6 hour sessions,
Right.
hundreds of episodes long.
Yep.
And if you're really trying to hone in on some of their most dramatic moments, you either got to go looking or you got to be in it for the long haul. And
Yes.
and similarly with Dimension 20 and all of their
Mhm.
shows, uh it had something about a horror thing that they did, but I lost it. It's fine. It's fine. Um I yeah, I'm curious to I in shifting a little bit, I think.
Mhm.
are there are there people in the scene, either voice actors that are doing the thing or actual play performers that you look up to, either for their career, what they've gotten and what they've achieved, or just like, oh my god, they're so fucking talented.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I will say yes and no. Um,
Okay.
I have a weird thing where I've never had like role models or people
Mm-hmm.
that I look up to. Um, there are definitely people where I'm like, I enjoy them in this specific thing that they
Mm.
have done,
Mm-hmm.
but I might not know the rest of their lineup because this
Okay.
thing is the thing that I like. It happens a lot in music where I'm like, I
Sure.
will know one specific song, and someone else will be
Yep.
like, "Oh, you're a fan of that band," and I'm like, "Who?"
I'm like, no,
Like,
that one song.
yeah, that one song. So it
Yeah.
happens a lot with people too. There, and I'll
Well,
give. Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say I could narrow it down, and my narrowing is
Sure.
who is there one actual play performer, one moment, something. What is when you think about other people in this space? What is the first moment? Who is involved in that moment?
Oh, you're gonna make me say the most cliche answer.
I don't. That's fine. We're here for cliches. Come on, look.
Okay,
I can tell you so many people have said Rogue is their favorite character class. Like it's by far and away leading,
okay.
and it's always about edge. It's not always about edge lording. Just kidding. Um,
Um, okay. If you put it that way, I will choose the God, I will choose the performance and the performer that made me join the scene, and
great.
that's Brennan Lee Mulligan in the second chapter of Critical Role's Candela Obscura, really the whole circle. But Spencer Stark and Brennan Lee Mulligan, there is, and I won't go too in depth, so there's no spoilers. But there is a specific moment and just to clarify, I didn't know anyone at that table. Like, I didn't
Sure.
watch Critical Role. I had no idea who these people were or if any of them were part of it. I was just watching Candela. So I didn't
Yeah.
know who these people were. I was just like, oh, cool. This is a really intense season. I like it. But there's a specific moment without spoilers where Spencer is the GM, basically offers something to Brennan as a player that's very powerful, very emotionally intense, to the point where they like leave the room to go decide it.
Wow.
Like, not even the table has any idea what's going on. Um, and they come back and there are no answers given until you get until the last episode. And that choice
Yeah.
and a little bit leading up to it where he had this and the reason why he got this choice from Spencer was because he played this moment with a character that he was playing that had a lot of anger. And I won't go into detail, I'm not going to say what he did, but the character does some very questionable and graphic things. Um
Mm-hmm.
and then gets this deal that is essentially, do you continue on this anger graphic possibly horrible path,
Right.
destroying your person, or do you turn the other cheek? And his commitment to playing such a broken person, like, that will never leave my brain because my experience with that kind of a performance
Yeah.
where not a villain, but you are playing such a character that is so emotionally like stunted and broken that he's willing to do horrific things, and you are in it, you are feeling it, you are performing
Mm-hmm.
it. I had never seen that with improv. Like, screw
Yeah.
TTRPGs, screw whatever.
Yeah.
I'd never seen it with improv. I had only ever seen that from, like, you pull up a Netflix show and there's pre-written dialogue and music and sounds. And so that performance all of a sudden clicked so many bells in my brain. I guess rung bells would be
Yeah.
better, but like
Both.
hit so many notes in my brain that said,
Yeah.
you can do this kind of a thing in improv. you can find people who are willing to commit with you in this
Hmm.
like intense, horrific space and come out okay on the other side. And you can do that in a space that has like in this
Yeah.
TTRPG area that's already been developed with games and settings and ideas and mechanics versus just, okay, go to your local theater, hope you can find 10 people and tell them that dramatic improv exists. So like yeah,
Well,
it's a little like I know those are big
yeah.
names, but that was the
No,
moment
but
by
that's,
far.
and I think that's legit. There's reasons why those names are big. There's
Yeah.
reasons why these people are, you know, our community's most prominent faces, most well-known GMs, most well-known players for a number of
Right.
reasons. Um, and uh, once again, I had half of a thought, and it's slightly slightly
Oh
slipping
no.
away from me there. No, you know, it's fine. Oh, I was trying to think of the number of times I've seen an improv acting group or class or whatever do something serious, and I think it is
Exactly.
exactly one.
Yeah.
Like
Like,
in a straight theater group, I think
right.
the lowest common denominator with improv is comedy. It is,
Mm-hmm.
I think, what we humans
Yep.
kind of tend to gravitate towards
Yeah.
is sketch comedy, improv comedy in that
Yes.
vein. And I can remember exactly once that I saw people, like I was a teenager, even it was 20
Oh,
plus years ago,
dang.
and there was this thing. It started out funny. It was
Yeah.
three people doing this scene and kind of set up this, like, you know, sort of 50s Americana-ish,
Got
like
you.
disgruntled dad with a
Yeah.
newspaper, slightly browbeaten mom washing
Yeah.
dishes, and like son home from college. And then it turned into this like really slight dark and emotional exploration of the
Yeah.
father character's like Vietnam history,
Wow.
and ended with a joke that, like, of course brought it all back
Of
with,
course
like, you
it
know,
did.
like,
Yep.
and are we ready for bunt cake, like whatever the fuck it
Right.
was. But so I think where I was going with that is that something that I have noticed is that games sort of free up people's expectations around
Yes.
improv to allow
Yes.
for dramatic tension and
Yeah.
allow for character growth and catharsis versus let's be funny all the time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And even a mixture of both. Like if you look at Dimension 20 and
Yeah.
NADPOD, I'm going to call it as like
Yeah.
the two biggest examples of this. Like, they're hilarious. It is comedians doing the thing,
Right.
and yet, you know, we look at what has happened to like Ali Beardsley's characters on Dimension
Yes.
20. Look what happens within every NADPOD season. The characters have
Yeah.
some amount of growth, even if it's then utterly ridiculous and it is not the growth you might think. Like,
Right.
yeah, yeah. Um, I one of the things that I think Brendan and others show us so much is the importance of your voice in these performances,
Mm.
because we're not
Yes.
up in physical, we're sitting down. It's not
Yes.
no one's yet live streaming LARPs in a way that I makes for compelling drama as far as I'm
They
aware.
better find me if they do.
um, do you how important do you feel it is to create multiple voices? I'm going to say, as a GM, like, do
Yeah.
you try to differentiate all of your NPCs and yeah.
So strictly voices wise, like actual voice, vocal intonation, stuff like that.
Hmm.
No, which is crazy coming from a voice actor.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Uh-huh.
but I find that it is less important that you are creating very distinctual things between NPCs and between characters than it is that you know, like, that character's choices and what they're going to do in situations and things like that. Because I am not a the type of voice actor that can do every voice under the sun. I very much will always sound like me, even if I go higher and even if I go lower.
Hmm.
And also a lot of voices that you can put on
Sure.
tend to skew comedic. So it's one of those things where you can't use a full range because how do you make the one that sounds like this dramatic, right? Like it's a weird, you're like,
I
okay,
mean, challenge accepted. Let me
right?
next game. That's the voice I'm doing.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I do think it's like do that and try that. But I think it's it's weird to say. I don't think it's immersion breaking if you have
Hmm.
to explain, like if your character's like, ooh, there's three, or your player's like, there's three people in this scene. Which one is like saying which thing? I don't think
Yeah.
that's the worst thing on the planet to be like,
Hmm.
oh, my apologies. This person's talking like this person's talking like this.
Yeah.
Um, Now, granted, if you're doing a series and my series is recorded first and cut, I'd probably cut that out. But like,
Sure.
unless it's specifically, if a player's telling me I'm not differentiating, then I might leave it in because that means the audience probably doesn't understand. Um,
Yeah.
but I think it's more that you are staying consistent with your NPCs rather than being
Hmm.
like, this is the high pitched one, this is like the low gruff, this is the whatever. Um, as long as you have specific ways that is making them distinct. If you're playing in person, body language is the big thing
Hmm.
that I think separates NPCs when you GM. I'm a huge body language person. If we were doing this interview in my booth, I would be standing because I don't keep a chair in there.
I
Yeah,
always
I
do the
do.
interviews standing. I can't fucking
Yeah,
sit down. It's terrible. I got to be able to move
good.
around a little bit. Also, I sit too much, and sitting is killing us
Yes.
as a
Oh my
species.
God. I'm so
Yeah.
glad you're standing for the two of us. You can do it for us. um, but yeah, I don't sit down when I'm performing. Now I sit on a stool for
Hmm.
my show. Um, but it's also stool, it's not chair. So I'm constantly like moving slightly. My head is tilting, like I'm leaning to a
Yeah.
side, I'm putting my hands on the table. I think body language, if people can see your body language, is a much clearer distinction than any voice you're
Hmm.
going to put on. Now, I'm sorry to audio listeners because that sucks for them.
I mean, I think you're not wrong. I remember talking to might have been to Emily Graymore a couple weeks ago, but like just you can change your voice just by changing the
Yes.
posture. If I'm suddenly shrunken
Yes.
over and shoulders are rolled forward and trying to do this very internal character, that
Hmm.
changes without me doing literally anything, then standing up straight completely changes how I'm going to approach the
Yes.
thing. Having said all that, being a voice actor
Mm.
and coach, are there things that, like, what are the most basic things that people could do if they're like, I want to not sound like myself all the time? What are like 1 to 3 small steps that I can take to just try to sound different?
Absolutely. When I was doing private coaching, I actually had a decent amount of people who were like, I play in D&D home games and I really like the role play, but I feel like I'm not getting out of it what I want to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So literally leads to your question exactly. A few of the big things that I tell people is, um, the first step before you jump into that role playing is when you are character creating and you, even if you have the most detailed character on the planet, something that they teach us in acting is the more details you have, the worse you will act. You
Mm.
actually trying, because you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to pull in the history that you wrote from when they were 6 years old, and how does that affect this and that and this and that. And it's too much when you're role playing. Um,
Yeah.
when you are stepping into a character and you're really trying to like differentiate your voice and differentiate your role play performance, you I often will suggest pick one specific like want or need, or if it's better for it to be an emotion, that's fine. For some people,
Mm-hmm.
they're visual or they're sense based. So, an image, a sound, a smell, a taste. Pick something that is like, if I had to play charades and I could only give one word or one thing for my
Mm-hmm.
character, that would be the
Mm-hmm.
thing I associate with them. And once that thing is attached to your character and you begin to think about it, or you begin to see it, or you begin to smell it, or you begin to hear it, it's going to trigger the rest of your body and your voice and stuff to go into that character. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really helpful. And then just from a vocal perspective, if it is
Yeah.
a specific thing where you're like, hey, I understand I'm going to do that to get into role play, but I really, really do want to try and have a different voice, totally fine. If that's the case, what I suggest is, and some people agree with me, some people don't, listen to like other people who are doing weird
Mm.
voice cartoons and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm a big mimicker. So if there's a voice I need to
Yeah.
create or match, I'm Googling like, okay, well, when I think of the very flamboyant, like evil villain, I'm gonna Google like Girahim from Zelda voice lines, right? And I'm gonna listen to
Mm-hmm.
his pitch, I'm gonna listen to his inflection, I'm gonna go, that's the voice I want. And I'm gonna say it while he's saying it. Or if I
Mm-hmm.
want someone that's like more uh energetic, more creative, more funny, does a lot of cackling, I might go to Harley Quinn and I might listen to
Sure.
that over and over. And so the best step I can give is listening and try to speak while they're speaking. Even if
Mm-hmm.
it means like you memorize 2 lines from this, TikTok clip that you're watching,
Sure.
say it while they say it and try to get the energy that they're doing, because oftentimes if you're trying to go like high pitched, what's going to get you high is the fact that a lot of high talking people have a lot of energy and they talk very fast, right? And so the faster, the more energy you have, the higher your voice is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and they're archetypes, and
Yeah.
and it might feel like you're stuck there, but if you can't get there to begin with, it's really good to go from those archetypes of like high
Yeah.
energy, high voice, low
Yeah.
mysterious, low slow talker, right? Get to those places and then build off of them is what I would
Yeah.
say.
And I think to your first point, to
Mm.
I think just restate a little bit, is it is creating a mnemonic, creating something,
Yes.
the one thing that really gets you into that character's mind space. So when you are in role play, when you are in
Yeah.
improv, your responses can come from what we might call the authentic voice of that character
Yeah.
versus any other way of doing it. I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah. And our again, I'm just like, oh, so many questions. I want to keep on the voice acting but pivot. So, your voicing artist original character series.
Yes.
The ideas, I understand it. I
Mhm.
think you sent out a call. Artists are like, here's a character, make a voice for this thing. Is that roughly what happens? How is your relationship with the artists that have sent you things?
So kind of, except
Okay.
actually, you know what? I'm gonna say it's the reverse.
Okay.
Um,
Sure.
I reach out to artists. I don't
Uh-huh.
ask for artists to apply to me. What I did, and it's been on hiatus for a little bit, so has the coaching as I've been delving into creating these different series.
Sure. I can definitely relate. It takes so much
Yeah.
time and energy to do the thing.
um, but what I would do is I would reach out to artists on Instagram because that's the platform that I had when I first started it. And it was just if I would go into the hashtags and I would search original character and I would scroll, and every time I found a drawing of a character that I thought looked cool, I would message the
Mm-hmm.
artist and I would say, I really like your character. I'm a voice actor. Can I create a voice and a personality for your character? Um,
Cool.
and a lot of folks were like, yes, but what do you need from me? Because I don't know how that works because nobody else does that, which is understandable. Um, and the interesting thing that I find working with artists, and I love voicing different characters like that,
Yeah.
um, is what I usually say is I need as little or as much as you want to
Mm.
give me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
part of the process of doing voicing artists' original characters is specifically I want to develop what I think my interpretation of this character is. So if there's something really, really specific that you're like, hey, this aspect of the character cannot change. This is who they are. I
Mm-hmm.
need this to be involved. Give it to me. But I've also had people where it's this abstract, crazy piece of artwork, barely a character. And they're like, well, it's not really an OC. It's just kind of an art piece. And I was like, cool, can I use it? Because I
Mm-hmm.
want to
Mm-hmm.
create, like, I'll name them. I will give it a
Yeah.
voice. I will give it a personality. Something that's very big for me when I create, and I try not to say create characters because it's their character. It's my interpretation of the
Yeah.
character.
Totally.
When I interpret like that, I'm a very, very big word person. So words mean very specific things to me that they don't
Right.
necessarily mean to other people. So usually what I'll do and works the best for interpretation and working with artists is I will take as much as they'll give me about names and history and backstory. And I love it. And I take all the beautiful drawings they give me and I walk through them all. And sometimes they'll give me personality traits, sometimes they don't. But I'll take things that they've given me, like loves cotton candy, right? And I'll take a
Mm-hmm.
drawing and that is of this character smiling. And I will realize that, and a lot of times it's unbeknownst to the artist, which is my favorite thing that happens. They have, unbeknownst to them, made the color palette of this character pink and blue like cotton candy.
Ah.
And they don't
Uh-huh.
realize it, but because they've given me these little details, I go, well, she's kind of color coded like cotton candy. She likes cotton candy. She's smiling in every single drawing that this artist has ever drawn her in. To
Mm-hmm.
me, that screams the personality of a person who looks outside in a rainy thunderstorm and only sees beauty. Like, that is somebody who, no matter what you give them, is happy,
Yeah.
is excited, wants to love people, has really high energy because
Yeah.
there's a lot of candy and sugar theme here. And so that, I think, is the coolest thing about doing those videos and getting to collaborate with artists is they'll give me a bunch and they are so generous to be willing to hand somebody they don't know their character and say, go for it and let me run with it and say what I see and impersonate them how I see
Yeah.
them. And it's not always, like accurate to how they envision that character. And that's
Sure.
okay. That's not the point, right?
Yes. No. I mean, if they were, I would, I guess, did anyone ever send you an incredibly detailed, like multiple page backstory of like what this artist thought this character was, to the point where you're like, well, there's literally only one voice I could possibly do for this character because of the information you have given me?
Have they sent me very long, detailed backstory? Yes.
Okay.
Has it ever been a case where I'm like, there's only one thing I can do? Never. Because I think if that's the
Totally.
case, you're not trying hard enough. Because
Fair.
and if you're an actor, like me as an
Yeah.
actor, genuinely taking on this responsibility, right? Um, there is always something that I can pull out, something that I can interpret, no matter how detailed and descriptive and certain you are about your character. There's always going to be something that I go, oh, that's, really interesting that you say she's been through this or that. Did that make her sad? And all of
Mm-hmm.
a sudden it's going to be a moment of, well, I wrote that backstory, but I guess I never really considered how she would feel. I just made the
Yeah.
choices she would make based on that backstory. And I think
Yeah.
that's the really, really cool part about character building and character interpretation is we will often, as an artist or as just somebody who's in TTRPG and creating whatever it is, when you created a character, you often forget or don't realize, or whatever the case may be,
Mm-hmm.
we skip writing down the step when the person lives in those emotions.
Yeah.
And we
It's
go
the
from,
events happen and the events happen and the events
yes,
happen and the
yes.
story does not include the emotional arc of that. Yeah,
Exactly. And
totally.
that's why that series, the three things that I did was I did a happy, a sad, and an angry emotion. And I would improv
Right.
dialogue for the characters in each of these scenarios, and I'd make up a situation that would make them happy or make them angry or make them sad.
Right.
Because I think that's where I can breathe a life in a way that the an artist doesn't, right? Like I can't draw and do a cool ass like character design and the artwork they do and the
Mhm.
creativity they have. That's on the artist. The incredible, amazing things that they do is the artist's job, and now it's my job to live and breathe in the emotional state of what they've created. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I accepting that it's on hiatus, it's been a little while.
Yes.
Is there I don't want to say like your favorite version of those, but is that you like the most memorable original character that you were able to provide a voice for?
Ooh.
Or first in your mind, we can say,
Yes.
as you think about this.
So okay, so I love villains.
Uh-huh.
So anytime I get to do more of a villain character, I really enjoy it because their emotional states are strange to a lot of people. Um, and the logic that you have to be able to reason into why they are the way that they are can change the way that they're portrayed. Um, so I there is an episode where I do a mad scientist.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an episode where I do like a religious cult leader, um, who are both kind of the same villainous energy of like they're a little over the top. They're a little bit crazy. They're a little like
Mm-hmm.
excitable. They don't quite understand the norms of like you could argue maybe a little sadistic, right?
Sure.
Um, but what I find interesting is that even though they have so many similarities, they were very, very different, not just
Mm-hmm.
in their voices, but in these emotional scenarios. The mad scientist, when it was angry or she was sad, the first inclination I have, and I always like to run with instincts, for her, the instincts in those emotional states were denial, denial, denial. And anything that was happening in this moment couldn't be
Mm-hmm.
real. Like,
Yep.
it's just not it couldn't be. It's
That
not
doesn't
possible.
happen. My plans are perfect. This is just
Exactly.
not happening.
Exactly.
Amazing.
Versus the cult leader who same energy, same vibes, same ecstatic, like sadistic personality, but her instinctual response to an angry or to a sad moment was why?
Mm.
Why? Like, what is happening? I need to know
Mm-hmm.
exactly why it's
Mm-hmm.
happening. And if the why is a reason, it was less of like, I don't accept the reason and more,
Yeah.
fine, then I'm taking you with me.
Yeah.
So it was like, it was cool to see how they were both so similar, but so different.
Yeah. And their responses to the same external stimuli will
Yeah.
be entirely different. Yeah.
Yes.
That is so cool. Well, I feel like it's high time to ask you the incredibly important questions, which
Okay.
is number one, Rachel, what is your favorite character class? It's the
Yes.
important questions we get
The
to.
important one. This is the important one. Okay, so uh I knew this question was coming, and I not a super big D&D player. However, the two games I've played in, the very first one, which I think is a little too obvious to who I am as a person, and I hate that, but I knew it was going to be the truth, is of course the Bard, because I am a
Uh-huh.
Bard in every way, shape, or form. um,
Yep.
I will say, like, out of subclasses for Bard, I don't have a specific one that calls to me. But
Sure.
Bard in general is just me in a nutshell. Um, they're loud, they're energetic,
Yeah.
they're controlling the room.
Yeah.
That's what they do. Um, The second game that I played for, which was the charity one shot, I had created a character for Daggerheart and brought it over to D&D. And it was a Ranger Swarm Keeper.
Ooh.
Yeah, and
Okay.
the swarm instead of like insects was rats.
Love
Um,
it.
because I love this sounds weird. I don't love it in its actuality. I like the concept of like plague and pestilence and
Yeah.
disease and four horsemen. So that's where that stemmed from.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Oh wow, that's so. I one of the things that we kind of keep bringing up about bards on the show is
Yes.
how versatile they are
Yeah.
in character. It does seem like bard appeals to a lot of people that have an acting background, have a performing background,
Yeah.
for a very obvious reason, I think. But the fact that the kind of bard you are can vary greatly. There
Yeah.
is there's kind of the standard, like, lusty lute playing horn
Right.
dog,
Right.
horn pup, horn
Yeah.
animal thing, but like in talking to Kitty Stryker, we talked about the bard who played in a dad jam band and was really bad,
Yes. Yes.
you know? Yeah. And that there's the face of the party. And then there's just like, no, I'm going to quietly go whisper to that guy in the
Yeah.
corner, 'cause I don't do
Yup.
public
Yup.
speaking, but I'll convince him real good.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wow. And just it's interesting to me that like those are the two places you went as someone who has not played a lot of D&D, because I would also argue bards are kind of one of the more complex mechanical things to play.
So,
And
okay.
no, go for it.
You're correct.
Yeah.
You're fully 1,000,000% correct. And it was the first game I ever played. I knew nothing about D&D.
Uh-huh.
The only way my GM got me to play is because they were like, "Why won't you play D&D with us? Like, come play D&D with me." And I was like, "I don't play that style of game." And later it's become me joining horrors and more of that kind of a game. But
Sure.
originally the only way I knew how to express it was I don't want to play a hero. And like, I don't want to
Mm.
be the good guy. And what I didn't understand was I just wanted the dramatic, not necessarily the
Yeah.
villainry. But at the
Yeah.
time, that's what I thought was, well, that comes with being a villain, and I want to be a villain. And so they were like, all right. So they put me in a villains campaign where we were essentially suicide squatting. And they were like, okay, well, the bard really fits the flamboyant, like energetic, loud energy that you want to have, but it's a little complex. So let me walk you through spells. And I was like, oh, I don't want to have like attack spells. And they're like, hold on. You chose a complex
Uh-huh.
class. You want to play a
Uh-huh.
villain and you don't want attack spells. And
I
was like,
love I love everything about this. What a great challenge for your GM too.
I was like, no, I only want support mechanics. I only want support. That's all I want. And so I had nothing that could do damage, except maybe fear, but I don't even know if that does damage. I think it only runs people
I don't
away.
think it does, just makes people run away.
Exactly.
Well, did you reject the classic bard spell Vicious Mockery?
I did.
Wow, the one and only bard in the history of D&D since Vicious Mockery was invented as a cantrip
Literally.
that did not have. Amazing. Yeah, we hear stories of people, killing a dragon with Vicious Mockery that does 3d4 damage in the last
Yes.
moment, but wow.
Yeah.
What a cool challenge.
Yeah. It was fun.
How Yeah, I do you remember what subclass you were? I guess I didn't ask what
So-
level and kind of the extent of this game.
So we started at 3. We only ended up going for like 2 sessions, so it was not a lot.
Okay.
But it was we did 1 combat, and then I think the rest of it was all like role play, but we ended up doing combat
Mhm.
within the group because we were villains, which was
Right.
fun. But I could not for the life of me, I looked up the subclasses of bards and I could not figure out which one I was. I know I did not homebrew it. So it was one
Okay.
of those classes. And I know specifically I did not pick anything with words. The thing that I made, it might have been like a more music elemented one. I just didn't have a instrument because what I did was
Yeah.
I made his sort of like music abilities was that he's an echo chamber. So it was the
Oh, cool.
idea of like when he like did bardic inspiration and stuff, whatever emotion was the character was feeling would like reverberate and invigorate them in that way because he's sort of like this echo chamber with
Neat.
music. Um
I mean,
and
I'm
yeah.
wondering, I'm just kind of based on the little bit that I know about, I'm wondering about like
Yes.
whispers or spirit spards, the like, spy
Yeah.
assassin or talk to dead people kind of thing.
I think
Feels a
that's the
little bit
case.
like the vibe.
I did have a raise from dead ability. So that might be
Okay.
that
Yeah, might
because
might have
I know
been
I
a
raised
spirit spard.
someone.
That's
Yeah.
cool. Neat. Wow. And I guess also as you were to shift to the ranger, like as you were creating a swarm keeper, did many people come up to you and go, "Hey, wait, rangers suck."
Um,
Which I
you
have now
know,
think is not true anymore. I'll say it again. It's not entirely true. Kind of
um,
true.
so no, because it was a one shot. Um,
Sure.
However, I learned that very quickly in D&D that they suck. Yeah, so he was originally built for Daggerheart, and it was the very, very first
Right.
open beta version of Daggerheart. So Ranger also sucked. No offense to Daggerheart. In the
Right.
very, very
Sure.
first instance of it, it was awful. And I don't know why I continued it into D&D when it sucked from there and it sucked in D&D. But I think it was because I couldn't figure out how to do a character that wasn't a druid with that could have a
Mm.
swarm of rats.
Uh-huh.
Because I specifically wanted it to be like I didn't want to be able to change into the creature. That was not a thing I wanted, and I feel like that's like if you're gonna go magic-y druidy route, like that's more powerful. And I was like, I want to be able to play a character that is somewhat useful, but I don't necessarily want. It's weird. I have a tendency
Yeah.
to, in all games I play, whether D&D, Daggerheart, Candle Obscura, I build and play characters that are inherently not useful. Like they're supports
Ha.
or they're bad at combat. Something about that
Uh-huh.
really, really appeals to me. Both the
Sure.
ranger and the bard had animal companions. The ranger being the rats, the swarm of rats that did all the damage, and the bard had a giant, like 30-foot tall shoebill stork that did all the damage. So it was I create characters that like I like to play that aren't necessarily useful. And I don't know why. It's just
Yeah.
fun.
I I think you get a lot of mileage out of it. And I would argue that I think it gives you a lot more to role play off of. If you're really good at
Yes.
the thing,
Yeah.
then it's almost treating the game like Baldur's Gate or like a solo
Yeah.
RPG where you have
Yeah.
objectives and you're knocking them down. And that's where the
Yes.
question, how do you win at D&D,
Yup.
almost become, whoa, whoa, new fun with Zoom. Okay, wait, let's try it again. Do I get balloons
What
when I
was
do?
it? Oh, oh,
Yay! It's either
that's
like
so
two peace
cool.
signs or it's quotes. We've done two thumbs up is the like, can we get it? Two thumbs up is fireworks,
Whoa.
right?
That's
I
cool.
don't know how to disable it, but we have fun with Zoom so often. Uh, God, what was I saying?
Something about
Oh,
nope, I don't have it either.
nope. I lost. It was something about the ranger and the thing
Yes,
and
and not
the
mechanically. Oh,
utility.
combat.
The
Yeah. Yep.
yeah the right. So when you
Mm,
don't look at D&D as how do we win?
yes.
How do I min max and there's nothing wrong with that approach, but I
Right.
think creating what is a useless
Yeah.
character that is not mechanically advantaged brings a whole set of problems.
Yeah.
And as many actors know, having
Yep.
problems makes for good theater. I have a clown friend who always likes to say, like, we don't want to see you having a problem. We want you to literally have a problem on
Yup.
stage.
Yup.
Yeah. Um, wow. Just the swarm of rats idea. I love this, like, the engine of plague sort of idea.
Yes.
Yeah. Amazing. Um, well, what's coming up for you? What is on the horizon? What are you excited about doing next?
Absolutely. So we are currently working on season 2 of my Candela Obscura series. It is new cast of characters, new setting, but something that I really, really enjoy about this series is since I'm also a live streamer and a content creator, my community joins me on our live streams before I begin
Cool.
casting and working on a session. And they create the world that happens in our series.
Wow.
Yeah, so the
Awesome.
NPCs, the creatures, the themes, the items, the combat, they Candela doesn't really have combat, but they it's all them, and then I take it and I weave it into a narrative with whatever the performers slash players create character wise and
Mm-hmm.
backstory wise. But it creates this really unique thing in the actual play and TTRPG world where like I literally hop on a live and I'll go the first season was all about shadow and time and what is legacy. And for
Mm-hmm.
when I started pitching season 2, the first thing we did was I was like, all right, what horror theme do you guys want? And it
Mm.
was just an hour of the long time that I stream of them going, well, what if we did medical? What if we did like abandoned town? What if we did
Mm-hmm.
Western? What if we did, classic Eldritch? And someone said in the chat, they said, what if we did underwater? And every single message was, oh, deep sea horror, deep sea horror. And so they picked
Wow.
it. They fully
Cool.
picked it. And from, the next couple of live streams were just them going, Rachel, I've created like an octopus creature with 6 heads. Use this in the show. Or we sat down and we created the resources. Like, what do these players use for oxygen underwater? Chat created that.
Mm-hmm.
What do they use for light?
Cool.
Chat created that. And so that's the next season that's in the works for us right now. It should be out before 2024 is over. And I love it with all my heart and soul because of the collaboration that happens and getting to see other people's ideas told
Yeah.
by actors in this beautiful way and changed and it's just incredible.
Yeah. That is so cool. Yeah. Yeah. It's such a gift to have a community like that, and one that I'm going to assume that you have also kind of consciously created and nurtured,
Yes.
because that seems to be the way of things. They don't always
Always.
just like spring up organically and then maintain themselves like a strange parasite.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, they
Yeah.
they sort of come from a mixture of people finding us randomly while we're live and enjoying our
Mm.
energy. And
Mm-hmm.
some folks who attend my voice acting workshops at anime conventions will join us live and just stay as part of the community. And some people find me through TTRPGs, but we love everyone. So come find us.
Yeah. On that note, where can people find you?
Lovely, lovely. Okay, so I'm on every platform under my name since I am an actor and a voice actor. So you can find me under Rachel Schumacher on literally every platform. Some of them include my middle name because other people stole my name. But everywhere you can find me, if you're looking for series or episodes that are edited and finalized, like the first season of Candela or the voicing artist's original characters or things like that, you can hop on over to YouTube. Twitch is our live streams. I'm live under my name Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, and possibly more depending on how the new year goes. But we chat, we have fun, we do activities on Saturdays. And we develop the campaigns as I was talking about.
Yeah.
And then I'm on all of the normal socials as well. So feel free to reach out, or if by chance you want to attend a voice acting workshop where you get to come into a sound booth and record original dialogue and get it edited and special effects,
Ooh.
and you get the whole thing back with music, suggest your local anime convention to hit me up, and maybe you'll see me at a convention.
Awesome. Well, do all those things. Find Rachel on all the things. And Rachel, thank you so much for joining me. What a pleasure to get to speak with you and to hear all about the amazing and very rapid journey you have been on.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm excited to hear more. And
Thank you. I appreciate it. This has been so lovely.
It has been a delight. And and until I develop an outro, we just kind of say thanks and bye, friends. Away we go.